All right. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the VIP Nutrition Coach Show. I'm your host, Matt Walrath, and I've got Kate Jaramillo here with me as well. And today we are going to be talking about how you can make lead generation oh so much easier by actually borrowing other people's audiences rather than getting stuck in the constant grind of finding Facebook groups in your niche and then going in there and DMing folks only to realize that their business coach also taught them to do that and you're pitching each other to no avail. All right, so that's the fast path to burnout as a nutrition coach trying to run your business. So today, what we're going to do instead is teach you about our borrowed audience strategy, which makes it a lot easier for you to generate leads, especially if you are side hustling or you're a mom with kid duties. If you've got other things on your plate, you can't constantly be relying upon going into Facebook groups, trying to establish relationships one-to-one, and hoping that they'll get onto a strategy session with you and becoming a client. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to pull up a class that I built out for you. If you are eventually listening to this on the podcast, I'll do my best to make sure that it makes sense on the podcast. But if you would like to see the full presentation in class, you can always hop into the online nutrition coach community or jump over to YouTube. So without further ado, let's get things going. All right. Oopsies. Figuring out the new streaming software. You guys are going to see everything. There we go. All right. So let's get into the presentation. All right. So as I mentioned in the tee-up, this is going to be our borrowed audience strategy to start getting inbound leads with less effort, because the way that organic marketing had been being taught and is still kind of taught is a bit of a grind. It's like go into a Facebook group for your niche. So you got to find those groups. You got to kind of add value, whatever that means. And then you got to kind of tiptoe your way around, make sure you don't get kicked out. You got to somehow add friends. Once you've added your friends, then you need to find a way to get them onto a strategy session and close them into a client. And believe me, this works. And, this is something that, we were teaching when we first started our VIP coach mentorship, because it did kind of work. But the thing is, that was 3 years ago that we started the VIP coach mentorship. And so that's 3 years of people learning this and using this. And so you can bet your ass that means that, if you go into a group, you're probably going to end up talking to a bunch of other coaches who learned this, less than potential clients. And that's why we decided that we had to adapt and we had to create some new strategies to help you make it easy, because that was a bit of a grind. And we thought, okay, if we've got to come up with a new, more effective strategy for lead generation, how can we make it easier? How can we make it so that it's not as much of a grind? And that's why we created our borrowed audience strategy. Because like I said, this is the standard organic lead generation formula. This is what was taught. This is what is still being taught. I probably just saved you $5,000 right there, because that's what people are going to promise you is going to make you a 7-figure or 6-figure business. But that's absolutely not the case. And so the thing is, it's a total recipe for burnout to have to constantly grind one-to-one with no leverage. Like, the only people who could potentially become clients are the ones that you're talking to right now. So if you decide that you want to go on a nice little vacation, that means that, well, you're not going to get clients if you're not working. So you've either got to decide between, do I enjoy my vacation with my family, or do I keep grinding lead generation, or do I just let my business suffer while I'm away? And the other thing is, with the kind of standard organic lead generation formula, it doesn't make a lot of sense if you're currently side hustling. Because if you have another job, if you have other responsibilities, kids, family you're taking care of, whatever it happens to be, aging parent who, you're now the caretaker for, you've got other things that definitely take top priority. And so if you end up having life get in the way, well, just having to constantly create new content to provide value, constantly be showing up in another Facebook group, constantly be, having these DM conversations, it just makes it really difficult to sustain that. And the other thing is, this is really risky. Like, what if you get blocked from your best group? Or if you're doing, one of the Instagram strategies we've seen taught is you go and you find an influencer and you talk to people in their comments. What if they, block you from their page? It's like, and what if you get blocked from your best opportunity because you're not doing it in a tactful way? And the other thing is with kind of the standard formula where, again, you're really just, people can see it. They can see that you're just trying to get them onto a strategy session. That's low trust. That's something where, like, you haven't done anything just because you went into a group and maybe someone asked a question and you answered it, or, you put up a post that's supposed to provide value. You haven't really gotten that much trust, lose and continue to lose trust. And so it's actually a really difficult way. That's why it's a bit of a grind. And that's why we want to take a look at how to flip the script and make this easier, gain more trust in the process. If you are, side hustling, if you do have other responsibilities that can take priority over your business at times, then you've got to have another way that you can use to get leverage to really grow your business. And, this really works whether or not you've got an audience or not at this point. And that's why we want to dive in and teach you what you can do now. We're going to be jumping into what the borrowed audience strategy looks like today, and we're going to continue doing a deep dive over the rest of February. So stay tuned to the end. We'll show you some of the other classes that we're going to run and show you how you can join in on those as well. So with our borrowed audience strategy, I'll get into step by step what that looks like in a minute. But the thing is, with the old organic strategy, that was one-to-one. That's like, you've got to go into the group, you've got to find someone who you think might need your help, you've got to add them as a friend, open a conversation as not awkwardly as possible, run that conversation as smoothly as possible, blah, 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 blah. And it takes time to build up that one relationship. What if instead you could build one relationship that got you access to many relationships? And that's the nature of borrowed audiences. If you have somebody who already has an audience and your ideal client exists in that audience, if instead of always trying to form one-to-one relationship with a bunch of ideal clients, what if you were able to do it with an ideal influencer, somebody who already has that audience? So you're still going through that intimate relationship building process, but you're doing it with somebody who then gets you access to many of your ideal clients. And I'll pop right down here. It's a lot higher trust. You end up building trust. So people have trust with their audience, and that trust gets transferred to you when they promote you. If they bring you in to do a live class for their audience, or if they, shout you out, whatever it happens to be. If it's a doctor and they're referring their patient to you, the trust that they have in their doctor, the trust that they have in that influencer is transferred to you. And so now you've built trust and built relationships, one-to-many versus one-to-one. You've actually gotten leverage. So this makes things a lot easier. The other thing is, ain't nobody got time for constantly creating content for other people's groups, or, constantly creating content for other people's groups, plus your group, plus your personal page. With the borrowed audience strategy, you just need a few good pieces of content that you can use to rapidly build trust with somebody else's audience, and you can reuse those. So you might, I might build rapport with Kate's audience using, 3 really dialed in pieces of content, and then they come into my audience. And then at that point, I'm able to nurture them, or, with a lot of trust, move them towards becoming a client. And then if I go and, I get access to Sean's audience, I can use those same 3 pieces of content. And then same thing, Sean's audience comes into my audience, I get to nurture them, move them towards becoming a client. And even if you are, and you should still be doing ongoing content creation, no doubt, but the borrowed audience strategy makes it more effective. So your ongoing content creation, because you're pulling new people into your audience from other audiences, it's actually a lot more effective when you're doing the ongoing content creation. Because the problem is, if you're constantly creating content for a static audience, like you've got 300 followers on Instagram and you don't grow your audience and you're constantly creating content for them, well, eventually, you're going to have to keep creating something different and different and different. Otherwise, they're going to start tuning you out. The thing is, you should be known for 1, 2, maybe 3 things. Like for us, we're creating the distinction where with this borrowed audience strategy, with the VIP experience, with the VIP offer stack, those are the things that we do different than anybody else. And so that's what we're going to talk about until we're blue in the face all year. If we, if you're watching us today, we're going to be talking about the same thing in 12 months. So you might tune us out, if you don't decide to actually dive in and utilize these strategies and see the success with it. But as new people come into our audience, they're going to see that, and it's going to open their eyes to a new way of doing things that could potentially be the thing that completely changes their business. So you should also be able to talk about things until you're blue in the face. And this ongoing content creation process becomes a lot more effective when you have a growing audience. And this is one of the easiest ways to do it without paying for ads. The other thing here is, because you've gotten these content pieces in front of them, or you've gotten a direct referral from one of your borrowed audiences, like a doctor, the conversation that you're having with them is immediately contextual. Compare that to if you have to go out and prospect and find people and kind of cold DM them or add a random friend and then open up a conversation. How weird does that feel? If you've done that, drop it in the comments. How weird does it feel to open a conversation when you're the one that reached out? When you're the one that was like, all right, I got to add a friend request and I'm here prospecting, so I've got to somehow open this conversation. Like, who's felt weird doing that? Because I know I have. And when you have borrowed audiences, it's not weird like that. Most of the leads come inbound. Most of the conversations are immediately contextual because they showed up and they saw you deliver this content, or the person who referred them to you told them what you do well and why they should talk to you. And then they reach out to you and they tell you why they reached out. The conversation has immediate context. You have immediate trust. You have immediate authority. It's a much easier way of doing things. And like I said, this is effective whether you have an audience or not. When you do have an audience, this is like a force multiplier because you can then share your stage with other people. So it becomes a lot easier to create win-win-wins, to create reciprocal relationships. It's a little bit harder when you don't have an audience, but it's not impossible. And I will say, if you're a brand new coach, if you don't have an audience whatsoever, if you're really fresh out of your certification, we've got other strategies that we would recommend doing first, but you can always start establishing these borrowed audience relationships as soon as you get certified, as soon as you make the decision, I'm going to be a full-time nutrition coach. And so I'll show you what that looks like here. Before we move on, how's this landing? How's this feel for you? Is this something that gets you excited? Is this something where you're like, oh, I already know that, Matt, I'm tuning out? I'm curious to get your feedback because this is one of the first times that we're really sharing this in detail with anybody. And while we're letting those comments roll in, Kate, I'm curious to hear if anything's come up for you so far.
Well, I think that you just hit like the nail on the head with like conversations are immediately contextual. And that's why a borrowed audience strategy will move your business along faster than Facebook groups and Instagram. Like Matt said in the beginning, those strategies do still work when done the right way, But it's a much longer nurture than it is getting in front of borrowed audiences. And what's great about this too is that you're able to think about what you want to be known for. Like Matt said, like you're going to hear us talking a lot about borrowed audience strategy, VIP offers, the VIP experience. This is something that we want you, when you think of Matt Walrath, Kate Hadamio, Beyond Macros, this is what we want you to think about. We want you guys to be like, oh yeah, those are the guys that do borrowed audiences. Those are the guys that can teach you how to create a VIP experience for your clients where you're the last nutrition coach that they ever have to hire. So when you get to choose what you want to be known for, you get to pick pieces of your offer that you would like to talk about in a way that delivers value to someone else's audience. It's immediate trust builder. And then when they come over to you, when they start following you, when they reach out to you, they'll be like, hey, I heard you on this like podcast. You made this really good point. I would love to ask you more questions. Yes, yes, hell yes. Like Matt said in the beginning, borrowed audiences are the best way to create inbound leads without paid advertising. And isn't that what you really want? Wouldn't it be amazing to wake up with an inbox full of potential inbound leads that you didn't have to go search for and like start conversations with and hope that conversation goes somewhere? Yeah, man. Who's bought into borrowed audiences and can't wait to learn more? Raise your hand.
Mm-hmm. I just popped into Facebook and Erica said that she loves it. Definitely feels easier than trying to start convos in Facebook groups, at least for me. And yeah, totally feel you there. And that's why we want to bring this to you. So now it's time to dive in to some of the mistakes that we've seen with borrowed audiences. And then we're going to get into the actual strategy itself. So some of the biggest mistakes that I see is people think, all right, I'm looking to get clients. I'm looking for that audience that I can take advantage of. And then, you go in and you're like, all right, I found this, awesome podcast. I'm just going to go in and I'm going to go straight for the jugular. Hey, Kate, your podcast is amazing. You should have me as a guest because I'm epic. And, just going in straight for the jugular, that's going to be a quick way to repel somebody. If you go in like push, like, yeah, I'd be perfect for you, then that's, not really displaying that you're there to help them or to help their audience. It kind of shows that you're just there for you. So, you're not going straight to the jugular here. You've got to have some tact, and we'll show you how to do that in a second. Another really big mistake that I see is that, some people think that just because, they got a podcast guest spot, or because they have a doctor who said, I'll refer people to you, or because, they have a CrossFit gym that's going to allow them to do a seminar series. They're not going to do the work for you. You should be prepared to do all of the promoting, all the content creation. You should be prepared to do the work for them. Make it really easy for them to refer to you, to bring their clients into your workshop, to promote the webinar that you're doing, even if it's for their audience. You should be willing to do the heavy lifting of making it easy for them to promote you. And again, similar to the first thing, it's like if you treat this as a me event, you get a podcast guesting spot and then it's just on to the next one, and you don't nurture that relationship with that podcast host, or, you're not creating a reciprocal relationship. It's all about you. Then that's another fast path to completely ruining a relationship with somebody who could be, an absolute gold mine for you and for your business. Somebody who you could have an amazing reciprocal relationship with long term. So those are some of the biggest mistakes that I see. Oopsies, did I miss holy crap, I missed the slide. Missed the slide with the strategy. So I'll just talk it out for you. Let's come back here. I'll go into solo mode. All right, so the strategy here for borrowed audiences is, first and foremost, you need to jump in and you need to find and do research and create a hot list. And you need to figure out your ideal audiences. It might be Facebook groups, but you just can't go in there with old strategy expecting it to work. It might be podcasts. It might be that there's, you work with, people over 50 and their doctor is the person they trust most. And so you want to form that relationship with doctors. I formed relationships with gyms, physical therapists, massage therapists, chiropractors. Those were some of my best borrowed audiences when I was running Beyond Macros. So you want to create a list of all the potential great borrowed audiences that you could get in front of. And then once you've created that, you need to become the best audience member ever. Step 2 is become the best audience member ever. This is the opposite of going for the jugular. So if it's, an influencer on Instagram and most of their efforts on Instagram, comment on their posts, genuinely like their posts, get so that they start seeing you and that they start being like, oh, Matt's a great audience member. If it's a doctor, tell some of your clients to go to them, refer to somebody before they ever refer to you. You want to be somebody who maybe shouts them out on your social media, even if you have a small presence. Tag them. They'll see it. they'll see it for sure. Kate and I have formed a great relationship with Steve Sims, and we just, started shouting him out a whole bunch, and now we've both got a solid relationship with him. So become the best audience member ever. And then once you become the best audience member ever, really start trying to establish that one-to-one relationship with the person who owns the audience. Learn about them. Try to figure out what it is that they started their audience for. Is it their lead generation source? Is it something more, mission-driven and altruistic? Like, try to figure out what it is that they started it for. And then from there, you need to figure out, once you understand why did they create this audience, then you need to figure out, how do you create a win for them, a win for their audience, and then as kind of a side effect of that, a win for you. And you do want to think about, what is a win for you? And once you've done that, then what we can do is we can create between 2 to 3 targeted pieces of content for every borrowed audience. So at that point, we can figure out, if you're podcast guesting, what is it that you talk about? What are the potential show topics that we can talk about? What are the pieces of content that, if you're, forming a relationship with a CrossFit gym, what's maybe a workshop or challenge that you can do for gyms? What's maybe something that you can give them that they can give, a branded PDF, a co-branded PDF that they can give to their clients as a value add to their clients, but also gets you in front of them. There's a lot of different options that we teach and that we're going to be talking you through. So you figure out what those content pieces are that you can reuse and that you can leverage. And so once you've created and delivered that content, you really need to make sure you have the right call to action to get people into your audience. Where do you want them to go? Is your best thing your email list? Is your best thing your Instagram? Is your best thing your Facebook group? How do you get them into your audience? Because that allows you to create those inbound conversations when they join your audience. That allows you to then nurture them a little bit more long-term if they need more nurturing, to build that trust level up to the point where it's an easy sale into some of your programs. And then once you've gotten people into your audience, you don't just forget about the other audience. You figure out, what does it look like to maintain this relationship on an ongoing basis? Do I invite them in to speak to my audience? Do I continue to provide value to their audience? What is going to make the most sense to create the long-term relationship? Now, I'll drop this process in the Facebook group so that you've got it, step by step by step, because I missed the slide here. But the other thing that we wanted to mention to you is that next week, we're going to give you 3 case studies. So Blake ran a 6-week group coaching program that was paid at a CrossFit gym. He ended up getting about 10 people paying a good amount for it. And then out of that, I think he got 4 paying ongoing clients. Tiffany, also similarly, she's done a lot with CrossFit gyms. We'll be teaching you about what she's been doing step by step. And Duvall, he's been doing it more online. Tiffany and Blake have formed these in-person relationships. Our in real life funnel is very effective, especially now that things are starting to normalize in terms of gyms being open in most places. But Duvall has been the absolute king of borrowed audiences online. I think just in February already, he's got 53 sales calls lined up. So that was just from one borrowed audience. And this is somebody who's invited him back and back again. And every time he goes in there, he's getting 50, 70, 90 calls booked. So, this is a super effective strategy. And we're actually going to be lining out how they did it so that you have a better idea about what this might look like from a few different folks. So if you would like to join us when we go through those case studies and outline how they had really effective borrowed audience strategies, then just comment, show me. If you're listening to the podcast after this, jump into the online nutrition coach community and let us know if you would like to see these case studies. Because it's going to be really powerful. I think learning through example, that's the way that I personally learn best. And so if you're similar to me, if you'd love to see these 3 case studies highlighted, we'll be doing that for you next week. All right, so again, just comment "show me" if you would like to get on the list for joining us next week, where we'll run through those 3 examples. All right, before we wrap up, I always love to turn it over to Kate. So let's actually, oops. Let's, yep, I think I put you on. I'm still figuring out Be Live. There we go. There's both of us.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, look, like if you have been banging your head against the wall, right? And you're just like, oh my gosh, like I've tried everything. I've tried the Facebook groups. I've tried, taking over these influencers' comments. I'm getting blocked. I'm getting deleted. I'm getting like actually really negative responses from the messages that I'm sending out. These are the times that it's time to adopt a new strategy, right? And like borrowed audiences are where it's at right now, and they are never ending. I have such good news for you guys, because they can go from Facebook to Instagram to TikTok to podcasts, blogs, vlogs, tons of people on YouTube. There are so many people in your local network. You can create power partners. You can, oh my gosh, you can do in real life events at gyms, at salons. Ladies, if you are going to salon, how fun would it be to plan like a ladies' night out and have like some local businesses there that you're all networking together, and it's super fun, and you can maybe bring some champagne or strawberries. I'm in. You can invite me for that. But really, the opportunities for borrowed audiences are endless. Let's bring networking back, guys. Let's bring it back. Let's talk about ways that we can help each other out, grow each other's businesses, and just do better things in the world. I think that this is the time for entrepreneurs. And this is the time that we can band together, share each other's audiences, share with each other, get the word out about what we're doing, and we just make the whole world a much better place.
Yep. Amen to that. All right, y'all. Well, hopefully this was eye-opening for you. Next week, I'll be doing a lot less talking, turning the mic over to Kate a lot more. But just wanted to make sure that we teed this up. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let us know, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye, guys.
Peace.